Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Big Question stage. This is our Cosy Chat, which we are talking about inclusion, wellness, impact on society, sustainability in fintech and financial services. And this is our all-boy final for you guys today. So this is a very exciting panel that we have for you. So we've got Christian Loma of the OP Financial Group, Per Christian Goller of Aprila Bank, Peter Schulberg of Santander, Finland, and Mark Cousins of Marqeta. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Morning, Liz.
Excellent. So as I mentioned before, we're talking a bit about, impact on society, financial wellness. We're going to have a lot of conversations about ESG. We're going to mention COVID, unfortunately, the topic everyone, you can't get away from in 2020. But I really kind of wanted to start the conversation talking about financial wellness. It seems kind of, obvious that financial wellness should be part of any discussion, whether a fintech or an incumbent bank, or looking at how society and individuals and businesses deal with their finances. But I think sort of financial wellness seems to be a very high priority in the Nordic region. Has that always been that way? So Christian, I was going to start off with you to give your viewpoint on how financial wellness is viewed in the region.
Thanks, Liz. Happy to. So, yeah, I feel like it's, at least for my lifetime, that's been a core message for all of the banks in the region. So alongside to advancing digital services, which essentially have been a cornerstone for financial health in a way, if you think about it, because being able to access the information in real time helps people visualize and understand their financial situation as well. So, yeah, I think so. It's been always a part of that. And as you know, Nordics has been bulldozing a lot of digitalization efforts. So we were the first country in Europe to ship online banking solutions, and we've been at the forefront in Finland and in the rest of the Nordics with the e-invoicing systems and stuff like that. Mobile payments, the same story, contactless transactions, very well in the forefront of the industry. And with those opportunities, with having the information available in digital format, whether in online or mobile, obviously, that has been one of the core use cases that the banks have been exploring, not to mention certain targeted efforts for younger demographics. I do remember them from my past, and we have been investing in that segment as well, creating services for our kids to understand how money is working and how to spend it. So yeah, for us in OP, it's been a very special part of the story because we are owned by our customers. So literally, we have to be responsible towards them.
Yeah, so I'm going to move on to Per Christian as well, so you can give sort of your opening viewpoint. How high a priority has financial wellness been for the region?
I think if you look at the sort of the background of the Nordic countries, of sort of the very Nordic social democratic DNA of inclusion. So this is kind of a consequence of that, because we're small countries, we need to cooperate. And I think particularly with the financial sector in the Nordic, it's always been very good at cooperating, creating single systems for clearing, etc., so that you're not operating lots of separate systems, and that means the building blocks are there for creating value props on top of that, quite simply. One very good example, I think, is that we're pretty in agreement on digital IDs, which makes it incredibly much easier for a new entrant that can only employ one digital ID that will be in mass use. So there's a long history of cooperation that helps in this inclusion, or including as many people as possible in financial wellness.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That was exactly sort of the route I was thinking of with that question. That sort of the region's emphasis about many of the countries with strong social programs, and also those of you joining us today, that the ID system, identity, digital identity. This is not the first time this has been mentioned on a panel at Virtual Nordics. It's been in several panel discussions so far. So it's kind of the jewel in the crown of the region for fintech and digital. So we're going back to Finland now. So Peter, how high, do you kind of agree with what's been said so far about how financial wellness is really kind of tied up in this sort of culture of social impact and social programs in the region, or how long has it been a high priority?
Well, if you look at banks in the Nordic region, I think they've played a very important role always. And if you look back in history, I mean, in many aspects, banks were there together with parents to teach kids to save. I mean, they handed out piggy banks. You had your slip, you were, counting your money, and off you went to the bank branch, and you emptied the piggy bank, and the teller told you how much you had, and what was the the bank account balance. So in many aspects, I think banks have played a very, very important role in terms of teaching children to save, and of course families to save as well. So I think it's always been there. And banks have occupied an important role. And I think now going forward, particularly in modern times as well, I think that's the challenge and the opportunity for banks is also to maintain this important role in a digitalized economy. Building on some of the infrastructure that's available, like the digital IDs and the prominence of online banking and particularly mobile banking. So that's I think is also an opportunity going forward.
I'm going to turn to Mark now. I mean, I started off this question, asking, shouldn't financial wellness or impact on society be a priority for fintech in general? So Mark, I just want to know if you wanted to comment on that. Shouldn't that always be at the top of the priority list when developing products, whether you're a fintech or a bank?
No, absolutely so. But I think the present scenarios that we face, and I don't really want to paint an overly bleak picture, but when you look at the macro environmental sort of factors going on, and whether it's the government indebtedness, pension ages rises, individual pension pots not covering retirement, wages keeping track with inflation, and so on and so on. There's a lot of things happening out in the world there, which present natural opportunities for fintechs to actually address those issues. And I think firstly, you've seen the challenger banks come in and do an absolutely fabulous job in terms of the interface, in terms of how they're displaying people's spending habits and the communication of their financial well-being to them. We've got an opportunity now with open banking for that to go a stage further in terms of you having all of your funds displayed in one place. So you've got that complete picture. And obviously with the challenger banks, it's the functionality they've also brought in place, whether it's small things that make a difference, such as saving pots, for example. So addressing that financial well-being on an incremental basis, just trying to do great things in small ways. And I think now what you're starting to see is the second wave of fintechs who are going a stage further now. So if you look at people like Dozens or FundsFi out of Madrid, Dozens started with just that great account management perspective of your finances, perhaps for the people who are unbanked in some circumstances, but now they've added that investment side to their portfolio. So they've done that in a very intuitive way, in a very educational way, to try and sort of almost bridge the gap. So I think they're bringing more education, knowledge to the market to help individuals be better placed for the future. I guess where we're looking for is where banking is ultimately going to go, and will it become that personal assistant that's really trying to help your financial well-being? So, Mark, I've looked at how much you're spending on insurance or electricity or your mobile phone bill. You seem to be overpaying. Perhaps you should be looking over here. So I think the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to see an explosion of whether it's AI coming in to really help with individuals address their personal well-being from a financial perspective.
So Mark, I'm going to stay with you because I'm glad that you mentioned the challenger banks, and a lot of the challenger banks and fintech entrants are, online. You access it through your phone. It's very easy to see, a centralized view of your spending. However, whenever people talk about progress and innovation in fintech and financial services, the idea of removing paper cash from everyday transactions comes up often, and particularly in the Nordic region. I mean, Sweden in particular have very clear goals to remove cash from day-to-day life. But of course, this panel is about impact on society. So I'm gonna stay with you, Mark, for this. How do you balance that? What removing cash might do to vulnerable people, unbanked? What impact would that have on society in the name of progression and innovation, so to speak?
Well, I think it's a fascinating question. The whole webinar could almost be about this one subject. I think inevitably you touch upon issues like the sort of shadow economy, vulnerable people who've found their way. They might be illegally residing in a country, and cash is their everyday, an everyday need to survive. I think I'm going to perhaps turn that question on its head, though, somewhat, and say I think the real opportunity for countries like the UK, where we're slightly behind, although COVID has accelerated undoubtedly our progress towards a digital only. I think the real opportunity for us is to learn about how the Nordics has addressed some of these bigger questions. How have they gone about educating people? No doubt, perhaps the older elements of people in communities felt more comfortable having notes in their hand. How's that education aspect progressed, and how indeed have you addressed the shadow economy? Taking money away from perhaps people who do need money. And then I think in the background, Liz, we have got this very interesting conundrum with ATM machines wherever you're based. I mean, the ATM machines are undoubtedly the backbone of many financial systems, and they're underpinned by the banks. And I think we all know what's happening with the banking infrastructure, certainly from a branch perspective. So I think this question is going to be one that certainly comes forward in the UK from perhaps where it was a year ago to where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I really want to go to Peter for a comment on this. I mean, as Santander, I mean, some of those points that Mark brought up about educating and looking at that balance between removing cash and digitalizing products. How are you viewing that balance?
Yes, I think a lot of the thinking that we've been doing around this is particularly, again, looking at the young. So there's a whole generation growing up with basically no cash on hand. Their experience is totally digital. Their experience is basically not connected to paying in store with having money in their wallet. That's a foreign concept to them. And of course, the one thing, of course, one can wonder is, what does that do? How do you sort of, how do you grow up and understand, properly the concept of money? How do you properly understand the concept of budgeting, things like this? So I think for us, a lot of the things where we've been, spending some time on thinking about this is how do particularly the younger generation sort of grow up in this kind of environment. And I think there's a lot of, again, coming back to my earlier point about, banks occupying a central role in society. I think there's the opportunity is to sort of, provide, information, tools and others, methods by helping kids to understand the concept of money. Particularly where also I would like to highlight that, it's not necessarily only the disappearance of money, but it's also the availability of credit. Easy credit is also availability of credit in a digital form. That combined with limited or no financial skills could be a dangerous cocktail. So I think that's something that's really something that we want to sort of study and understand better.
Interesting. Yeah, I really wanted to get everyone's comment on this sort of balance between progress, innovation, and removing cash from everyday life and its impact on society. So I'm going to go to Per Christian now. I mean, what kind of discussions have you guys been having about what impact that this would have?
We're in a different situation from Santander and OP Banki because we're a small niche bank for business. We don't take cash. We don't have any branches. We're purely digital. So my perspective is that cash, for the most part, is the source of money laundering. It's the source of paying or is getting paid for services without paying tax. So I'm not fond of cash at all. I wish it would just disappear. But we have this party in Norway called the Retired People's Party, and who insisted on keeping cash simply because old people, some old people, still are not confident with digital payments. But besides that, I think they will be naturally phased out at some point, and then on the other end, you have, like you were talking about, illegal immigrants, and I don't think that's a sort of separate issue. I don't think we should keep cash as a source of money laundering in society just because we have illegal immigrants, so that they can have money. I think we probably should look for different solutions for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually not the first time money laundering has been brought up at this event as well, when talking about removing cash. And interesting, you talked about the old people's party. I think that checks remained in circulation in the UK, but for very similar reasons. So, Christian, I'm going to go to you. I mean, where do you see that balance? Are you taking the mindset that cash is just for criminals and illegal people and money laundering, or do you think that removing it would actually have a real impact on certain sections of society?
Well, I'll go as far as admitting that cash is bad for sure, like in a lot of ways. I think we can all agree with that. It's expensive to manage and it's unhygienic and all that. But we do have a different perspective because, like, we are, as I mentioned, owned by our customers. We have 2 million Finns owning a piece of OP Financial Group, and that puts us into a different bucket when it comes to making the right thing and responsible thing. So even if that may be one of the biggest sort of expenses for us to maintain and manage cash distribution system, we've been doing that obviously because there are segments and pockets of customers who are in great need of that. And I'm referring to the elder people. For sure, that has led us into doing a lot of research on the topic, trying to find ways to encourage senior people to give up cash as an alternative. And there has been sort of minor innovations for sure that have been really encouraging. And I think it's interesting to me that fundamentally the root of the question was related to what problems do we introduce by removing cash. And what we've discovered is that we've identified the very same problems in different flavors with young people who've never seen cash, as Peter said, and the elder people who are forced to give up cash. And that problem is control. So they feel like they don't have financial control. The young people don't have the visibility and understanding of what cash feels like and what it looks like. No sort of like verbal cues like the rest of us had when growing up and learning financial skills. And the young people, the older people feel like now that is being taken from them, what do they have left? So we even experiment sending a text message after every transaction with a card, and that seemed to be resonating fairly well with those older demographics, which may not have necessarily access to the mobile banking because of similar reasons related to digitalization being sort of a scary thing. But as for the distribution of the cash, I think that's exactly why we've been a part of an ATM network. So way back, the Finnish banks lined up and started to, operate an ATM network as a joint effort, which is now sold further. But the rationale there was that it's not like value adding for any player particularly. So why don't you share and pool resources? Just like Kristen said, that we've been always good in collaborating and things like that. So that's maybe a few perspectives there.
And interesting. I'm gonna stay with you for the next question. We're moving on to, it's kind of broadly about ESG and environment, sustainability, and governments, and sort of ESG investing has been around for a long time. Specifically, people looking for green funds and looking to invest in companies that don't have an adverse impact on the environment, for example. But I think the past few years, we really started as investors and as consumers looking at how companies sort of conduct themselves, either culturally or how their products kind of impact their customers. I mean, the Robinhood trading app had someone commit suicide over when using the product. Here in the UK, there's a blogger who has kind of a personal campaign against Klarna, for example. She's on the radio all the time. Has this been heightened in the past few years? So I'm doing this broad understanding of, as a consumer, as an investor, looking at how companies kind of govern themselves. Yeah. Are they diverse? Have they looked at how their products might impact certain sections of society? Is that now gained greater prominence? Have you seen right at the moment? So I'm staying with you, Christian, for that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like ESG related investment products and green bonds and sort of loan instruments that are targeted for green investments has been a thing that we've been aggressively developing for the past few years, and there's been an increasing surge of demand. But also, you can see these questions rising up in everyday finances as well. Few of our competitors have already launched solutions for following and keeping track of CO2 emissions. Mm-hmm. We've been kind of hesitant to do that because it is still pretty difficult to make that estimate based on transactional information only, where you're basing it on the category codes. But that shows the interest that people have for understanding their spending habits and their impact on the climate wellness. What I feel like really interesting is that in addition to these categories of spending and investments, there's increasing discussion about the topic of non-financial reporting. EU or EBA has been launching criteria for EU taxonomy, which is about compliance towards climate-friendly goals, and we've been trying to help out our customers, the corporate customers, also understand and X-ray their own supply chains with this non-financial reporting needs. And I think it's a matter of just coming up with legitimate frameworks and standards and norms. Once we have those in place, then a lot of good things will happen. People are already willing to do the right thing if you give them the tools and create visibility. So for sure, in short, yes, the demand is surging.
So Peter, I don't know if you want to comment on that. Are you seeing, I know everyone wants, to invest in a company that makes a lot of money, but is there sort of in your observation of sort of the industry, is there becoming more of a priority of looking at, how companies deal with themselves and whether they understand what impact they have?
Yes, absolutely. And, we certainly see that in the Nordic region as well. We of course have a number of sort of, let's say, capital markets activities. We've issued a green bond as well in the Nordic region out of our Nordic entity, and I could say that over the course of Santander operating in the Nordics, and when we've been sort of doing various sort of bond activities and other types of placements. The number of questions regarding ESG has only been on the increase. So we see certainly from an investor perspective that is definitely on the increase. As I mentioned, we've seen we had a very successful green bond issuance as well. We have some products. For instance, here in Finland, we're the pioneer and the first one to launch a sort of emission compensation car finance agreement for private consumers. So we've tried with different things, and we can see that there's interest in this area. And I think it's kind of important, again, more sort of a broader point. If you look at the Nordic countries, basically we talk about Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. If you look at some of the UN, sort of indexes in terms of, ESG rankings in terms of how important it is, the Nordics come up somewhere in the top in the SDG index. I think it's in the top 6 we have for Nordic countries, and that means that there's it's very important, and I think also therefore companies and actors in the market sort of need to mirror the setup of the Nordic societies as well.
Interesting. I'm gonna move on to Mark now. I mean, you work with a lot of fintech companies. You mentioned dozens, for example. I mean, are you seeing with your partners and your customer base a heightened priority for some of these issues?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I mean, we've been engaged with a lot of conversations recently with a wave of card products, which I would say are more committed and go deeper and further than anything I've seen in the marketplace to date, are based around, the whole ESG sort of perspective and framework. And I think those, what we're seeing in terms of the ambitious propositions that some people are putting forwards to us, allied, I think, to certainly a groundswell amongst consumers. I think the one thing that COVID has done, I think, is it's made a lot of people stop. It's given us a lot more thinking time. We're not commuting. We're not rushing around in perhaps the way that we were. I think a lot of people are probably questioning how they have been doing things in the past and whether they've been doing things in the right way, and whether there is, whether they should be changing their habits. And I certainly think those of us with young children, the issues my children talk to me about, they're so much more well educated than I ever was at that age. They're just bringing things into focus, a sharper focus. So I see it coming from both angles. I see it coming from a product angle, and I can see it being driven by consumers as well.
Yeah, so we're gonna close off this question with per Christian. I mean, so other people on the panel have talked about that maybe ESG is a high priority, especially in the Nordic region and not out of the countries. What are your views?
I think so, but I think it's becoming a priority everywhere, and I'm just so super happy to see it, because all ideas need time to mature. And these very important ideas are now so mature that they're immense and everywhere in society, like Mark says with the kids, that you can put financially, you see funds pulling out of, they have for some time, pulling out of investments in companies that are not taking this seriously. You see dedicated ESG funds being able to raise cash just as easily as ordinary funds, or even easier. I think in the last, during this year, ESG companies have probably on the overall performed better than most other companies. You bring this hydrogen innovations and new battery companies, like this in Sweden, this gigantic battery facility. These things get financed, and they probably wouldn't have a few years ago. But now it's deep all the way through all of society, so it's being taken very, very seriously, and that's when change is made. So I'm really happy about all this focus, and now it's actually not just talk anymore. Now it looks pretty real.
So we're moving on in our conversation to that time where we all have to talk about COVID-19 and the global pandemic. I think everyone agrees that this pandemic is going to have very long-lasting impact on how we work, national economies, regional economies. And so I really wanted to get kind of your viewpoints on all of this. I mean, even in the Nordic regions, the different countries in the Nordics have dealt with a response to the pandemic in very different ways. So Peter, I'm going to start with you, and to get your philosophical hat on, or your experience hat on, what are some of the impacts long-lasting impacts that you anticipate to happen in national and global society and economies due to the pandemic we're all living through right now?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and it's of course a very, very serious question as well. Of course, what we've seen is we've seen, of course, a very sharp impact on the economies, in terms of GDP, and with an expectation of that, of course, to come back. I think, of course, within that, it's very, very interesting. Will be very interesting to see, how various sectors will sort of come back. What is the comeback actually going to be about, and which sectors will recover and which will be changed, slightly, and which sectors will be changed, for a very, in a very profound way for maybe forever. So I think that's something that there's probably going to be sectoral change. I think of course what's kind of important is that I think it's, of course, health is really being put into the forefront of many types of conversations. I think health will of course no longer be just the sort of a sort of personal issue. It's going to be a national issue. It's going to be a security issue, and then I think that's something that is of course interesting to see how that sort of plays out, and then I think another important thing, of course, is this sort of what we're now experiencing is remoteness. We are working from our homes, business is being done, banking is being run from kitchen tables, from living rooms, and that's sort of worked okay up to a point, and for a certain period of time. But I think I think this sort of what this will do to travel, what this will do to transportation, what this will do to mobility, and other types of industries is of course going to be very, very, very interesting. So I mean, if and I think, of course, what a key thing that we can probably already now establish is that at least we're probably not going to see that digitalization is going to be reduced or less important going forward, but it's something that's going to be pretty sort of sustained and accelerating at a very rapid clip, and so I think that's something that's going to be something that I believe that is probably going to be the most long-lasting impact of this, on top of health sort of security issues, etc. But I think the digital is on the move and on the march.
Yeah, so we're gonna stay in Finland for the next comment. So I'm going to Christian here. We know what the short-term impact of COVID has been, but where do you see the long-lasting impact?
Well, yeah, it is like mentioned, digital is here to stay for sure. It was 3 years of progress in 3 months. But I think you framed it perfectly. Like, this is the moment that we're going to see whether the emperor has clothes on for every single company, in good and bad. And it's kind of a juxtaposition that we have to manage. We have to be fast. We have to be data-driven. We have to be creative. We have to grab and hold on to the opportunities, whether big or small. And we have to stay away and steer from the risks. However, I think if you ask who are going to come on top, are the companies that are going to be still sustainable and value-driven, and the companies that actually have something to say, who have a mission for which they work for. Because whether we like to hear it or not, we are entering an era where literally we compete everywhere. That's to me what the digital transformation in this short period of time is. People are fleeing San Francisco and coming to Finland even to, still people working for Google or Facebook, but, enjoying the sort of perhaps the nature, who knows? I don't know why people come to Finland. Anyway, the whole point that I was trying to say is that we may have a really bad time, but we still have opportunities literally everywhere. Controversially, we have to compete with everyone. when this sort of digitalization accelerates and goes forward. So really, it's about being value-driven, yes, data-driven as well, but having a mission and a cause.
So yeah, so I'm going to per Christian now on where you're seeing sort of some of the long-lasting impacts on society and the economy.
Well, that's a big question, but there's a couple of things that we're a bit lucky in time, in the sense that just a year ago you couldn't get the video conferencing system to work, whatever you did. You had to download things and nothing worked. And then when COVID-19 came now, suddenly you had all these systems that work really well, even from a laptop at home, which helps us keep safe, obviously. Now we can actually work from home. I think that FinTech and the banks like ours, of course, that kind of thing plays a part, because with Aprila offering financing only to businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, they can become a customer of ours in just 2 minutes from home and get financing in 2 minutes. You don't have to go visit the branch, bring with your paperwork, go up and down to the branch with you signing different papers. You can do it from home, in your home, in 2 minutes, and get the financing that your business needs. And this is sort of just how the level of digitization can help us keep our businesses moving and still stay safe through this video conference from a laptop at home, and getting financing and other things that you need, again, from convenience of social distancing.
Yeah,
I think that the digitization part is an important role in keeping us safe going forward into, we have no idea where this COVID-19 is going.
Well, I'm asking you guys to bring out your crystal ball, which I'll keep you to all your predictions. But we're going to Mark now, so you can think ahead. Where do you see some of the long-lasting impact of the pandemic?
Well, I think the guys have all covered very valuable contributions there, and I've probably not got that much to add from that perspective. But probably where I'll bring the conversation back to is FinTech. And I think the one thing we all recognise is been a tremendous amount of capital has flowed into FinTech investments over the last 10 years. And we've probably all been in situations where we've looked at a proposition that's launched and we've tried to understand how that proposition is going to earn money, how it's going to attract customers. So I think this could well be a challenging point for those FinTech propositions that aren't as robust, don't have the clearest of propositions, have launched without really understanding how to monetize their proposition. And I expect to see capital perhaps being tighter going into FinTech, the due diligence perhaps being harder. And we may well see over the next sort of 6 months, 12 months that a number of companies won't see years two or three because they won't get the next round of investments. So I think there might be, this may well have driven more focus into the investment into FinTech for sure.
So Mark, I'm going to stay with you for our final question. I'm going to start with you for our final question for the panel. I'm someone that believes that the world doesn't need yet another metal card for high net worth individuals from FinTech. But, during our discussion, we've talked about inclusiveness, cashlessness, ESG, pandemic. My question to start off with is kind of simple. Is FinTech offering any answers on the above? Are we going to see more FinTech for good? So, Mark, what do you think about this?
I undoubtedly answer yes. I mean, right across quite a lot of sort of the different areas of ESG. I mean, if you look at the unbanked population, certainly in the UK, we've got propositions like Pocket, Anna, dozens that have helped address that side of things. From an environmental perspective, you've got people like Bunk or Mitto or Tomorrow, who are all very sound propositions and very committed to addressing the environmental perspective. And then I look at, Marqeta itself, and some of our clients in the US and the UK have been responsible for pushing out government funds in these needy times to businesses and individuals. I think the thing with fintech is that many fintech organizations have pivoted 2 or 3 times themselves to exist. So they're adaptable, they're resilient, they're used to facing challenges, and applying that sort of methodology and mindset to what we're in at the moment. Also with the mindset of doing more good in the world, I think we're going to see some more positive solutions coming, and we need it, quite frankly. So. Yes, is the answer from myself.
Excellent. So I'm going to move on for the final question to per Christian. Does FinTech have an answer to everything that we've discussed on this panel?
I think FinTech has a lot of answers in the broader sense of technology. No, I think the way Finland is cooperating with some of these people are cooperating with the Finnish government. There's nothing it's not what you think about as a startup fintech, but it certainly is really high-tech fintech. Mm-hmm. And so in the broader sense, I think technology is really, really helping us a lot, and will be continuously helping us even more. But it doesn't have to be startups like ourselves. It can be, larger organizations like Peter and Christian's organizations also developing fantastic technology, often in cooperation. I don't believe in sitting on your own and developing fantastic stuff, because the world is too complicated. But through cooperation, you can make amazing.
Yeah. No, I agree as well. Yeah, FinTech is a lot more than just a small startup. It's everyone in the ecosystem, which brings me to Peter at Santander. Is FinTech giving us an answer for everything that we've discussed today?
I think we're going to need fintech going forward as well. Fintech has been important in the past, and I think it's important right now, and it's going to be important in the future as well. I think in the broader sense of the word, in times like these, we need new ideas. We need new innovations. We need bold ideas, and we need a lot of new thinking as well. And I think, in order to tackle some of the bigger challenges in the world, particularly, where they also sort of interconnect with finance, I think, FinTech is in a good position to try to, take a crack at those. And then as Per Christian saying, in collaboration with banks, there's an opportunity to scale.
Excellent. So Christian, I've given you the final word. My lovely final broad question. Does FinTech have an answer to everything that we've discussed?
Thank you. It would be, after the previous comments, very difficult for me to say no, but I'm going to go ahead and try. I'm going to go ahead and say that no, not alone. But that obviously exclamates the point that was already made, that we're going to need collaboration for being able to address those very, very important questions. We are going to need a lot of collaboration with the incumbents, and in joint ventures, perhaps through joint platforms as well, that surfaces going forward. We certainly will be tackling those questions related to sustainability as well as financial health. So yeah, I'm optimistic, but we will not get there just by doing work alone.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you so much for sitting down with our cozy chat. I greatly enjoyed it. And all of you watching, you can join us in our interactive session where our FTT spin room analysis provocateurs will be gathering to discuss what we've seen on the main stage. So I'm Liz Lumley, and I thank all of you. Bye.